When you're working in Adobe Illustrator, it's all about intent. I think we know that. When I'm working on an illustration or whatever it is, what I'm trying to do is understand where it's going to go so I can design for that final destination, if you will. And I'll use an expression from a speaker that I really do like, Stephen Covey, who is an international speaker, and he's written a lot of books and done things. But he's got the 7 habits of highly successful people, and the second habit is, of course, begin with the end in mind. We always want to do that. So in this movie, this lesson, let's go ahead and take the intent of doing something on a monitor, like say for the web, for a Microsoft PowerPoint presentation, but it's going to be viewed, well, just like you're looking at my stuff right now, it's going to be viewed on a monitor or, I don't know, maybe a television, whatever. So open up saveforweb.ai. That is in your exercise file. And I do have 3 layers down here. We're going to cover some of the things that we can do to get an image ready for the internet. Now let's go ahead and start with simple. I'm going to turn that one on, and that is obviously about as simple as you can get. It's got a couple of circles and kind of like a cross going through it. But it will give us an idea of quality as we go into this area. Another thing to remember, if we are going out to the internet, one of the things you want to remember when you go down to the word File on the pull-down menu is you go into Document Color Mode. You want to be obviously in the RGB color mode because monitors are RGB, televisions are RGB, paper, print, press is CMYK. So let's leave that at RGB for now. And let's go into the word File and down to Save for Web. Now the word web is there. But it's also, like I said, for Microsoft PowerPoint, a lot of other things. Go ahead and click that button. Now you may have noticed that I had 2 other layers that we don't have selected. When you're saving something for web using this option, it will only give you the layer that you have actually visible. And we'll look at the others in a minute. Let's come down here first, and let's change the number 100 to fit on screen so we can see it. Now you typically have 3 options up here. This is a little bit different than what you might see if you've been using the same thing in Adobe Photoshop, but it's got a similar process to it. We have the original, and it's telling us that the original is actually 2.05 megabytes. That's too much for the internet, obviously, but that's the original. And don't forget, by original, I mean actually the original image with the other layers we're not using yet. We're just using this one layer. If we go to optimized, it just shows us the optimized. If we go to 2 up, we get to see the original on the left and the optimized one on the right. And actually, let's do this. I think we can get those back up to 100%. That's the way it's going to look. That's how big it would be if it were on a web page or in PowerPoint or whatever you're doing. And right now it looks pretty good. This is the original, again at 2.05. This one, now check out that number down there. That's pretty impressive. That's 3.447K from 2.05 million. What is that? That's about 99.5% smaller. Now we are using the GIF format. Now, here's all your stuff over here. The GIF format, graphics interchange file format, been around for a long, long time. Its primary purpose in life is to help you compress clip art, logos, text effects, things that have solid colors. GIF uses RLE compression, run length encoding. And what that means basically is if it can see a solid color, it's going to crunch that bad boy down to almost nothing. So that's very small. That would work great on the internet. It would load very fast. That's kind of cool to know. GIF has a competition. If you click this button right here, you actually have one called the PNG 8, Portable Network Graphic 8. Now, in my opinion, eventually GIF is going to be phased out and PNG 8 is going to replace it. Now look at all the stuff you have over here, all the other options that you have. If I change that to PNG 8, also remember the size of the file is 3.447K on a GIF. If we change that to PNG 8, it's now 4.35. It's just slightly different. And the options that you have over here are basically the same. PNG 8 is just kind of like, I wouldn't say new and improved, but it's an improved version of the GIF format, the graphics interchange file format. And the internet now does support it pretty much. But if you're not sure, if you know you've got people back in the Stone Age on their web browsers, you might stick to the GIF format for now. And actually, it does make it a little bit smaller, at least the way we have it here. Now, you will notice this is the number of colors that it recognizes in this image right here. We're telling it up here that it can use up to 256, and that's many more than what we need. If we lower the number of colors, we can make the file even smaller. Now, if you want to go all the way down to the minimum, which is 2, watch the image on the right there. Well, it looks horrible. Number one, that's only 2 colors. We don't want that. But what I usually do is this. I start at 256, looks just as good as this one over here, and that's fine. That's what I want. I want it to look as good as the original. Now, if I come over here, I just start dropping those down by half. Okay, that still looks good. 64, still looks good. Go down to 32. Actually still looks okay. We get down into 16. Still doesn't look bad. Get down to 8. Now, if you look at it very closely, it is starting to fracture on some of those colors around those angles. So I'm going to take that back up to 16 colors, because it does seem to do well at 16. We have the ability to change things like transparency. If you don't want that, which I do, GIFs do support a certain form of transparency. You can interlace it. Now, that's going to basically decrease the size just by a little bit, but what interlacing does is it downloads the image in multiple passes. We can change the width and the height of the image right here by a percentage or a number. We can choose to optimize this by art or by type. Now, that is nothing but art, so we can leave that alone. If you like what you see, you click OK, you save it, you've got it. But GIF is not the only format, and this is not the only one we're looking at. So let's get out of here, cancel. Turn off Simple and open up Mesh. Now, Mesh is much more complicated. Now, it is a vector. It was created with the gradient mesh. This is not going to go out to the internet for a lot of reasons. Number one, it's too big, but the other one is it's not going to take an AI. One of the things to remember that when you go to File and you select Save for Web, by default, the computer is going to rasterize this. It's going to turn it into pixels at a resolution of 72. So let's check this one out up here real quick. We go to Save for Web again. And I can come over here with my hand tool, move that over. You see, right now it looks great next to this one compared to it. Now, it is a GIF. If you look very closely, you might not be able to see this in this movie, but if you look very closely, this area, see where the transition of color is going, is slightly rougher. Not much, but it is slightly rougher than what's over here. So GIF's not really cutting it, but the size is 2.05 meg. The size of this one is 42K. That's not bad when you think about it, but that's still a lot. Let's try this. If you go into an image that is photo-like, and although this is a vector, it is photo-like, you should probably change that to JPEG, Joint Photographers Expert Group. Now, you have one downside to this, but it's a big one. JPEGs don't support transparency. You can change the color. Now, check this out, actually. See it against white. Now, look at it against black. This is color theory and how the mind works with color. But certain colors interact with other colors to make other colors look more vibrant. And when you put it against a black background, those colors actually look more vibrant. But since you're working with a background that's black, unless you want it to have this big black box going around it, you might want to figure out what the color is exactly you're putting it against. Instead of using black and white, you can click this button right here, and you can choose a color. If you are going out to the web, you could actually type in the actual web color numbers down here and get an exact match, and that would make that blend in. But look at the difference. This image is 18K. Now, that was down from the 42 on the GIF. It's doing a better job, and it looks awesome. But the big deal is, and I'll admit it is a big deal, is we are working with an image that will not go against a transparent background. Now, what's replacing the JPEG and will eventually, once bandwidth gets to the point where we can just about do what we want, is the PNG 24. Now, watch what happens when I do this. And remember, the size is 18.92K. Okay, we're up to 106K. That's like 4 times bigger. But the PNG 24 is lossless. JPEG is lossy. It removes color to make it smaller. And what the PNG 24 does is it supports soft transparency, and it will make it look exactly like the original. But if you look at it down here, that's a lot of file size to sacrifice just to get this. Let me take that back to JPEG for a second. In the JPEG option, we have quality settings over here. And if we go over here to this button, we can go into low. And if you'll notice the image, look closely. It doesn't look as good as this one over here anymore. It's starting to get blurred on the edges. If you keep your eye on it, when I take it back up again, see, it does improve. So what I try to do here is lower it and lower it and lower it until it gets to a point where I'm visibly seeing it's got a problem, and then back it up just a little bit more, and I wind up with, in this case, 40%. And I like it. It's only 17K. So if the image in Adobe Illustrator is photo-like, one of the things you probably need to do here is work with the JPEG format or the PNG 24. It is accepted on the internet, but if you're working with older browsers, you might not want to take that chance. Let me cancel out of here and show you one more thing. And that would be mixed stuff. So in Adobe Illustrator, I have a photograph. I have some vector, and they're both together in the same piece. Now, when you do that, you need to err on the side of the photograph. So if we go into Save for Web, we don't need to go over these again because we just talked about them, but you would go into either JPEG or PNG 24. Now again, the original, 2 megs. If we come back down again, this one's only 111K at 59% quality. You have a lot of options. If you make changes here, even to the size, and you like what you did, you can click this button right here and actually save those settings. They would then appear under here. And if you'll notice, if I click this, well, you do have some that it gives you. You could try out. But what we're doing with Save for Web is not just for web. We're using it to take a vector image or a raster image and convert them into something that can be displayed and are best utilized on things like monitors and even television sets. That's Save for Web. On to the next.